What? She can't cry? I was amazed at myself.
Hi, can we talk?
For centuries, ever since humans started to appear on this planet, crying and expressing emotions has been the most normal and the easiest way for us to release and process our emotions. For example, like to difficult life events, to happy life events, to good things that happen to us, bad things that happen to us, any sort of events in our life that could possibly provoke emotions. Crying and expressing the emotions out has always been the most effective and normal reactions. But to me, it has been one of the most difficult journey I have been on of unlearning all the unhealthy coping and distorted emotional regulating systems I inherited and learned subconsciously while growing up. After this short encounter I had with someone recently, it showed and proved to me that it's funny, but I'm able to cry now. And that was the first reactions and response after I realized this. I would say like a little bit of a disappointing rejecting situation happened, and that proved to me that I have unlearned the unhealthy coping one and learned and applied successfully the healthier way of emotional regulation coping system to my life now. Since I'm now able to cry, I don't just started to analyze first and then intellectualize first and then just do everything I could possibly do to avoid crying, to avoid releasing my emotions. I'm talking specifically about crying, not necessarily like other emotional expression, because other it's sort of fine for me. Crying is something that I was taught and grew up subconsciously learned that crying is weak. Which is ridiculous because crying is the most normal thing that somebody could do. After a difficult and long self-growth journey, I am able to cry now effectively in the most human, normal way that anyone could possibly do. And this short encounter with this person helped me to realize that that was how I react to sad or disappointing events in my life now. Like, it's actually become my emotional regulating system now. No longer becoming emotionally numb because I avoid crying because I was clinging on the thought that crying is weak. I shouldn't cry over people. I don't know. I was taught that some people are not worth crying for and stuff like that. And especially in dating, like, that was just a bit, I was so distorted. It was just so unhuman. Then I started to realize that, you know what? I have to unlearn it. And before, my reaction was always like I became emotionally numb. Like I wasn't able to cry. I started to think about it. I started to analyze. I started to intellectualize. I started to do whatever I could in my head, in my mind to not cry. But I did cry eventually. Like it eventually got out. It was just not a very good, normal, effective emotional regulating coping system for me. And it has never been. Because that's just not normal. It's just not a normal way to react when you're disappointed. But now, I no longer cling on the thought that crying is considered being weak, which is crazy. It's a crazy realization. And it was something that I realized a couple of days after the disappointing event of this short encounter I had with this person, when my rational mind kicks in. That's when I started to realize things, that I realized the reality of it and not being so caught up and overwhelmed with my emotions like the first day anymore. And I also realized that I am now being able to separate between which one is my personality versus what I unconsciously learned as a kid from the coping system I was provided. But the ingrained thought that crying is weak and I'm the strong one. I mean, I'm still strong emotionally, I think. But I mean, I'm just so people and human oriented. It's just in human connection. We cried because we connected with them in any sort of way, and our brain recognized them as the connections. Yeah, so it came as a crazy surprise to me that I am now being able to cry effectively and normally like anybody else. I saw myself letting me release emotion first right away in my recent ending with that person. So it was rare. It's a rare one. It's a rare and I would say precious one to me at some point. But but it's gone now. And that's reality. The whole reality here of why I learned subconsciously and inherited this toxic emotional coping system have something to do with something a lot bigger than me or any other people I grew up with can control. It was a history of the culture and the country I grew up in, and I don't blame anyone, and I don't have any reason to do that. Now, the history has something to do with a survival mental states, where Vietnamese culture had a history of poverty, wars, and colonizations happened thousands of years before me. That created an eternal survival mindset passing through generations until mine, unless exposed to a different mindset, to a different viewpoints, to a different societal system, to a different cultural system, and ways of living and life perspectives. And society changes and evolves and developing, which it has been developing very fast for the past few decades after the wars. If not, this way of unhealthy coping mechanism and just I would say very strong survival mindset would keep passing through the next generations. But I know this rate and speed of development, it won't be the case in future generations. And I know why some people mature faster than others in terms of practical life problems, solving skills, and learning the healthy emotional way to cope and regulate yourself and be rational with life. That is also my case. But I think mine was because if I don't update the system that I had and inherited and learned subconsciously into a new, better, healthier system, then the toxic, unhealthy life situations and system that I face will always still be there forever. So in other words, the toxic people I have to deal with who don't have healthy emotional regulation coping skills or personal boundaries and always living in a survival mode, then when my life is always constantly being in those alerting high stakes mode, 360 days like that, then I'm pushed to learn to update my coping system better and solving problem better so that it didn't always leave me always living in alert or high stakes that gonna affect my nervous system negatively and my health negatively over time. And I'm only speaking from my own life story and situation. And I also think some people or certain personalities also have higher tendency to reflect more, think more, or receiving social or emotional or life feedbacks in real time from other people and correct themselves or learn and apply them right away, especially if they value self-growth or self-improvement, like learning and challenging their limits and their comfort zones, or just naturally have the tendency of wanting to care about becoming a better person, better version of themselves, or some just naturally like structure, stability, order, discipline, routine, and planning in their life. And that's just how they create a sense of safety, and maybe that's their nature, their natural personality too. Others, I don't know, maybe they already got a good coping and emotional regulating system from their family or their upbringing, or maybe their family value internal or external stability or maturity, life structure, so they naturally mature faster than others. And that was just my personal guess coming from my personal observations that I observe from other people in life and society in general. And it's not actual facts. And as we all know, each person's life story and situations are unique within itself. So just take everything I just said and observed with a grain of salt, okay? In my case, I think I'm the type of person who deeply values self-growth and self-improvement. That's just how my brain works. And I always think about how I can become a good person or a better version of myself than before. And I like learning and correcting myself in real time, so I constantly collecting new data points from the outside world and internally to learn to optimize my system, solutions, and skills. And I'm naturally reflective by nature. Has its pros and cons there, but I guess that's just how I am. Now, I know that I'm sounding like some sort of saint, but no, I'm not so. Don't put people like me or any people who like to keep learning and keep updating their system or keep becoming a better person, keep improving themselves into a pedestal that they're perfect. Because human, it's a very complex, layered creatures, and some just value learning and become a better person and improving themselves more than others. So now, I want to say that I'm the type that I tend to process experiences and emotions right away instead of waiting or suppressing them emotional wise. Of course, I still get things done. I still do things that I need to do. I still do chores that I need to finish. I still have my to-do list to cross off while processing them in the back of my head. As of now, my frontal lobe and my brain is more developed and I have more independence and I'm navigating adult life. In the past, I couldn't cry or release my emotions out yet. I went on alert survival mode of overanalyzing, suppressing my emotions, even if they're intense and negative and need to be released out. I started to rationalize, intellectualize, or even worse, dismissing my true emotion, dismissing all the emotion that I was feeling, lying to myself, convince myself that I was fine, even though I was never fine. It was miserable because even emotions, good or bad, if you have seen a movie called Inside Out, all emotions are valid no matter what and needs to be released and felt, not judged, overanalyzed, or stigmatized. But there is a line there. There is a line between knowing how to cope and regulating your emotions versus actually figure out a way and learn to be rational after to be realistic about the whole situation. It's you now have the full picture of reality. But the updated, better coping, emotionally regulating system that I now have learned and applied and really actually automatically respond and react that way when some bad, disappointing life events happened, it's crying and releasing all the emotions out first right away and writing about it maybe extracting lessons, but at the same time separating all those subjective personal emotions from my rational mind. So I was still being able to feel all the emotions while being rational and responding rationally. Of course, if I was crying, it's usually in more of a private place. It's better for me to do that in private. I'm private about my emotions, I guess. Or at least I try not to let my personal emotions affect others. That's the right way to put it. But I have a different process of emotional coping mechanism now, or at least a better one. I was able to separate my personal emotions to reality and objectiveness. And it took me real effort and real discipline because all of the stigmas and judgment that I learned unconsciously from the past while growing up, it just took a lot of practice for me to get here, to have a better emotional coping system. And depending on the depth of the experience or the life events, I was now able to shift my mindset to objectiveness and reality in retrospection. And then maybe I was able to extract lessons from it and saw it fully through an objective, rational lens and no longer needing to separate my personal emotions with my rationality. Because after my rationality kicked in fully and I was able to see the whole situation or the whole life events fully, the full big picture of it, I no longer felt as much the emotion. And also because I already released them out right away. And because I was able to cope with them in a healthier way, I was able to close the narrative of the life experience from my end in a realistic, objective, rational way that it makes sense that I reacted and make the decisions that I made with no regret. And that happened because I am now able to emotionally regulate myself in a healthier way than before. And now, up until this point in this life stage, my brain is still developing. It's still refining its frontal lobe. I tried hard to update my emotional regulating system. It's not the best yet, but it's better and healthier than before. And this time, with that short encounter I had with this person, I have already integrated all the emotions that I felt and all the intuition that I sensed when I was with them. I started to go back with signs I saw, with intuition's voice whispering in the back of my head when I was in the present with them. And most importantly, I realized that I no longer had an emotional block like I have been for years, rooted in my upbringing. Therefore, I suppressed my emotions and feelings down to the point that I felt sick in my stomach and chest and organs, and my head spinned around and spiraled inside in a way that I wasn't able to control because I didn't let myself cry or release the emotional externally. And I clinged on the thought, the only thought that I was taught that I need to be strong and don't cry, and it's not worth crying over some people. I didn't accept my emotions as they are. And as a human, I have the right to feel and to get hurt, and no matter if it's worth it or not, or no matter who they are. All emotions are valid. And then after that, I couldn't function properly because I don't let myself feel and release all the emotional out. So it's been a long journey of self-growth and life growth for me to accept all the emotions are valid. And I'm a human with emotion, not a robot who don't feel anything. This time, I know that those growth and lessons have become reality because I was able to cry right away on the spot. Well, afterwards, I was still being able to respond to their text calmly and rationally from an objective and realistic standpoint. I was amazed at myself, now thinking back, of how far I've gone and grown as a human being. And I'm proud of myself to grow and learn so much for the past 5 years of adulthood. And I think this video probably might be boring, might be weird for some of you that, what, she can't cry? But to me, it was a meaningful one. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.